Hello. The next series of videos you will watch, I will be posting on Thursdays. I'm going to be calling it Throwback Thursday. And these are videos that I had originally posted for instructional purposes on my old YouTube channel. They did decently well, especially for somebody who wasn't maintaining a YouTube channel at the time. I hope you enjoy.
Hello class. If you are watching this video, you have chosen to work with a square on paper, which means you'll also be using the transformation, okay? So we're sliding. Now the one thing that I'm going to be expecting is that you construct this square. That way we're building on the knowledge from our past, from constructions, and we are not guessing that it's a square. We know it's a square. Now the good thing is, I'm going to walk you through it again. If you don't remember, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start with just a length. That looks like a good length. If I go ahead and zoom out on the entire sheet of paper, you can see it's not quite the entire length. It's definitely more than half, and it looks like it's more than 3/4, so that gives us a good length to start with. You don't want to start too small, otherwise the translation, when you actually start transforming it, will look. I'm not going to use this entire length anyway because I need to use some of it for the square, so that looks like a good length. But you also don't want to do too big, otherwise you're going to end up with not enough transformations. Remember 15. So I'll start it at my point here. I'll create my line segment. Okay. Point. Another point. And then as you recall, we want to create a perpendicular line to this point right here. So I'm going to go ahead and set it to more than half that segment length. Draw my arc. Draw that arc. Label that point. Now if you watch the triangle video, there's not this many constructions. I'm going to go ahead and extend that line. But because there's a square, there's going to be a few more. It might be a good idea when we cut it out to cut it and then turn it over. So those constructions. And then again, it's a tile either way, so it's not going to show on our final tessellation. Now I want to set it to the length of my original segment and copy that centered at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I did. Created that mark there. The construction of the square is definitely more involved. And then I'll go ahead and copy that segment here. And this segment here. Okay. So then I can connect my segments. There we go. Let's go ahead and cut. I like to be very careful when I'm cutting. Make sure I don't slip up and it remains exactly a square. I just like to go slow, and then when I get to my final point, I like to go over a little bit so I can make sure I have enough room to turn and still cut accurately. I know a lot of the videos I watched in preparation for this say you need 3 inch by 3 inch, you need an inch and a half by an inch and a half. Like, just don't worry about measurements. There we go. There's my square. Constructed by hand. Okay. Now, a lot of the videos I watch, some of them recommend that you start at the corner, and then some of them recommend that you give a little room. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. Just make sure that if you start, say you leave that much space before you start your design, you were to start your design at this point right here. When you translate it over, you want to leave that same distance. That's why I like to go with the full length of the side. That way I know how it needs to be lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now you can start left or right, doesn't matter. Sorry, this is left, this is right. I know that. But I'm going to go ahead and start on my left. I'm going to start at the corner. And you're a person who may have a design in mind because you know what your final product needs to look like. I don't do that. I just design and cut. Now, as I said in the GeoGebra video, you want to make sure there are no overlaps, because if I start going off at an angle here when I'm translating this bottom up, there's going to be a small piece that gets left out. So here I'm going to want to start and I'm just doing random lines. I'm not thinking about what it could look like in the end. And there's my design. Now I'm going to cut out this piece and I'm going to translate it left. Take this piece and I'm going to translate it up. Sorry, I'm going to translate it right, not up, left. And then translate it up. Okay? So, now this is important. When you're cutting, you do want to do the best you can to follow the design you drew, but if you happen to slip with the scissors and deviate from that design, just keep cutting. Don't worry about going back, because if you start trimming the edges to make sure it fits right, the tessellation is not going to look right in the end, okay? So, I'm going to start cutting slowly and deliberately. If you think you're being cautious, be even more cautious. That's how I like to cut out my tiles. You know, the videos I watch like to say, oh, cut perfectly. Well, there's no such thing as cutting perfectly. It's just cutting to the best of your ability and just going with the flow. I always like to think that there are imperfections in all the greatest art. And I know artists, I've heard the phrase before, art is not finished, it is only abandoned. So see, this didn't quite make the corner, so I'm going to start at the corner anyway. Just leave that edge there. That's not a big deal. But I always feel like a lot of artists feel that they could always do better. I just want you guys to make something you're proud of. There we go. Okay, so we can start to see how I cut it out. Now this piece will go up, if I can pick it up, and this piece will go right. Now the important thing is to remember to line it up exactly, make sure there are no gaps and there are no overlaps. That not only goes for our tessellation, that goes for the original tile as well, because if there's a gap, it's not going to quite look right. And the same if there's an overlap. So lined up perfectly. See if I can do this. This is the part that always frustrates me the most. Make sure that everything's aligned. Oh, it moved. Of course it does. It did. It always does. Ooh, that wasn't bad. And I noticed there's a little sliver of tape. I'm going to cut that off. very carefully. I'll go ahead and tape as much of it in as possible so that it's as fortified as possible. And then this, come along here. Once again, a little sliver of tape. Oh, I may just have to fold that over. I don't think I'm getting in that groove with the scissors. Okay, I'll just have to work around it. But there you go. You can start to see the final tile. There you go. Now, I mean, whether you're using paper or you're using GeoGebra, creating the original tile is probably the most time-consuming part. Creating, well, definitely on GeoGebra, when you have a computer doing the work for you. Now comes the tracing part. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my paper, and you're using just an ordinary sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper. And I always like to just set it in the middle, anywhere in the middle, and just go. Just start tracing. Got to be as careful as possible. So, and the goal is to fill up the sheet of paper. So you can start to see it. I'm going to pivot it so I have better angle at my tracing. Slow. But now you can start to see why I chose to work with construction paper. It's thicker. It's easier to trace along. Nuts. There we go. Oh, dang it. There we go. And there's that corner with... Okay. There is... That kind of looks like a frog, I think. Now, once I've traced that part, I slide it along, and this is good to see. You won't have to see me trace this whole sheet of paper. Even though you're expected to cover the entire sheet of paper, this is important to see. It didn't quite get the entire tile on the sheet of paper. That's okay. The reason why it's okay is because we're dealing with a sheet of paper here. We weren't going to be guaranteed to fit this a perfect amount of times because it's an imperfect shape. So as long as it's on there, that's what counts. So I'll finish this one tile. There you go. You can start to see it take shape. I've still got this much of the paper to go, but I mean, once you have the initial tile in place, it's just about filling up the sheet of paper. Okay? It's a little bit more work by hand, but I think it's more rewarding in the end. And then a couple options for decorating when you're done. If you wanted to go over the tracing with a marker, give it a little bit more boldness, that's okay, or not. You can choose to just try to blend the colors over the pencil, and that way it'll look, well, more blended. That was a very lame way to say that. I apologize. But, yeah, there's your tile. Good luck, and, well, good fortune.